Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. I'm not satisfied when I learn something new unless I share it forward. And so we created this podcast to continue that, to share forward the wonderful people we get to meet and most importantly get to learn from and make our lives richer and better. Together we'll cover the human experience. And for me, the human experience is foundational in the idea of relationships. The topics will be far-reaching, but common element you'll see here is it's all about relationships. So I invite you to join us on this journey. Come experience it with us, share your thoughts and ideas, and become part of our community. We'd love to have you.
The old leadership model of command and control in the workplace has broken down in the past few years. The rise of remote work, the Great Resignation, and many other factors have proven that traditional leadership styles no longer apply in the world today. Companies not sure how to change have lost employees who are unfulfilled or feel unappreciated by their leader. Luckily, Stephen M.R. Covey has a solution. Mr. Covey is a world-renowned keynote speaker and author, most known for The Speed of Trust and Smart Trust. When his father, Stephen R. Covey, released his seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen helped develop the strategy that propelled the book into one of the most influential business tools of all time. Stephen's newest book, Trust and Inspire, details a way of leading that starts with the belief that people are creative, collaborative, and full of potential. The concept places value on the employees, not the stakeholders, to inspire them to become the best version of themselves and produce their best work. Let's learn what the Trust and Inspire model has to offer as Stephen M.R. Covey shares it forward here on Celebrations Chatter.
How are you?
Doing terrific.
I assume the new book, Trust and Inspire, is doing terrific.
Yeah, really excited about it.
And as I understand things, it just took you a couple of days to knock it out, that you hadn't been working on it for a dozen years or more, huh?
Yeah, it was honestly, I was thinking about it for 17 years and then 6 years of working on it. And, part of it is like you, I'm doing other things. So this is kind of, while I'm doing other things and doing my speaking, writing business but trying to work on this new book. So I'm excited to get it out.
Well, and it's a treat for all of us that you did put all that time and work into it, because it's just a terrific guide. Everything's changed. The change was coming evolutionarily, and then of course COVID accelerated those changes so dramatically. How has your world changed as a result of COVID? You in high demand on the speaking tour.
Yeah,
I imagine you went from traveling a lot to not traveling so much, and now in hopefully the later months of COVID, that things are moderating somewhat. How's life changed?
You're exactly right. I literally went from, in February of 2020, I had a packed schedule, for the next year.
Yep.
And within 1 month, 95% of it was gone. And then what remained was going to be virtual, but that was still when people were even debating, how long is this going to take? Maybe we'll just cancel for now. We'll reschedule later. No one knew.
Yes.
So my schedule completely just disappeared. And I didn't get on a plane for about a year. And so that it went away, but then we began to do a lot of virtual events, and it started to become acceptable. And especially as this thing, continued, and
Sure.
At first, no one knew how long this COVID thing would be. Yeah, we're still wrestling with it. But here's what I'm seeing happening now is, right now, there has been a huge growth in the in-person visits and presentations, and people are kind of excited to gather. So I'm doing a lot of things on-site in person again. And it's also become acceptable that you can do it virtually.
In a strange way, I guess it's magnified your impact.
In a strange way, absolutely. There are times where I literally am on site with a client and then go back to the hotel and do a virtual event. And I couldn't have done that before. It wouldn't, the virtual event wouldn't be seen as acceptable.
And how is your audience changing? You've been in front of the public most of your adult life, and grew up in a household where your dad was in front of the public eye all the time.
Kind of like I describe in this book, that the world is changing, the audience is changing too, the expectations. As many as 5 generations, and Gen Z and millennials have a completely different mindset of how they want to be led and engaged, and they're the majority of the workforce today. In terms of kind of how they view leadership, it's changing dramatically. I mean, I'll give you one example. I just did an event, I guess it's been 4 or 5 months now, with a 100% all virtual company. It was actually created during the pandemic.
Yep.
And they had like 250 people. This was their first on-site meeting together ever, but they were all, in this case, young. They were all 35 and younger. The way we've done it in the past is not necessarily going to be what's going to take us to where we need to be. Like Marshall Goldsmith said, what brought you here won't take us there.
Yep.
And we got to build these high trust cultures that inspire.
I think your message is so timely. I'm an old dog. I still love being in the office. I love walking around, high-fiving somebody, checking in. How's the family? What's going on? And I miss that.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to hang on for dear life to the old way. And so I said, okay, I have to learn new tricks, and I have to adjust. It is what it is. But, lying down and kicking in a tantrum is not going to change the way the world is going. So that's when I sort of surrendered to there has to be a new way. Then reading your book gave me more tools to think about how we have to adjust and how we have to learn.
Right.
How do we work to maintain the culture we think that is good and healthy for our company and for its people?
It's a challenge, is the bottom line. And you have to be far more intentional and deliberate about it, because it doesn't just happen in the same serendipitous way when you're together. I agree with you. And I still think that, some combination in some way and form will probably play out in most organizations. There might be some exceptions where they're almost all virtual or something, but I think people do long for the human connection. I think that being deliberate can be both at times of maybe there's deliberate times where we are bringing people together. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's more frequent. Maybe it's not, depending upon the business and the context, it may be that they're primarily remote or hybrid, but the hybrid is really designed that hybrid doesn't do any good if a few people are in the office and everyone else is at home, then why go at all? No. The hybrid needs to be, when we do come together, we come together intentionally to really be together, press the flesh, have those connections. And, so it's that, but also then just trying to find ways of, when we are virtual, to do the best we can to have those equivalent water cooler talks. And they don't just happen. You really have to, I find myself I'm online on a virtual call on a Zoom or Teams, and I'll literally just private message someone saying, hey, hang on right after.
It's incumbent upon us then, is what you're saying, is to mimic those interpersonal contacts in a more digital form that we would have had in person. We have a not-for-profit charity that we started half a dozen years ago, and we were thinking about creating a new event as a fundraiser, more as a friend raiser. It all happened in casual conversations around the office. And if I wasn't walking through HR and stop and chatting with these 2 young ladies, I wouldn't have found out that her dad, one of the ladies, her dad has got a popular band on Long Island. And then in another conversation, hear about a place that has a wonderful expanded now event space, and put the idea together to put them together and try and get 1,000 or so folks to come hear a couple of these terrific local bands. You don't make a lot of money at it, but you get a lot of people to understand what you're up to, and maybe get a handful of new volunteers. But that happened in accident in the hall. So you have to find ways to mimic that in a more virtual sense. When you hear something like that, I guess we're going to be texting a lot more.
Texting, maybe calling, and following up on the text, just saying, hey,
Yep.
just had this little thought, this idea. It won't just happen.
Yep.
That's why we have to be more deliberate, more explicit.
And what I was surprised at, or delighted to read rather, in your book, is how this new style of leadership that you talk about, that you write about, is not just about people in the expected leadership positions, but it's the leadership for parents.
Yeah.
It's leadership lessons and style for teachers and for coaches. There's a young man with Down syndrome who got in a pool yesterday and did his lap, and every parent, every grandparent, every participant was at the edge of the pool cheering him on. And it was a tingly moment, Stephen.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, thank God there's some things back in person, because those lessons would not be learned
In other ways,
in a Zoom experience.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't. That's why being together remains magical. And so I think part of the solution needs to still say, yes, let's try to be more deliberate about things we do virtually and find ways to connect. And let's also find ways that we can gather still from time to time, even if that's all it is. Even this 100% virtual company found they loved being together.
Yeah.
And here, they were very proud of the fact that they were founded during the pandemic. They were all virtual and everything else, but they found a whole different level.
We do crave that togetherness, that intimacy, don't we? Yeah.
We do. We crave it. It's part of being human.
One concern I do have, as the country seems to be getting a bit more polarized all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a car service recently, and there was a chatter on the radio about people returning to work, and the driver turned to me and said, "Mr. McCann, every time I hear that, I grind my teeth." I said, "Why is that?" He said, if I want to work, I have to get up and go to work every day.
Right.
And these people, this privileged group, he called them the snowflakes. The snowflakes who are worried about doing 3 days in the office is out of the question. And I wonder about every FedEx driver, every UPS driver, every fireman, every bus driver, every car service driver, every food service worker. When they hear that, are they gritting their teeth?
Yeah, I think to some degree, there's still so much of our economy that requires people to be physically present.
80%, in fact.
80% what it is. Yeah. It's just that the other 20% is a kind of a high level discussion and almost like an elite dialogue going on.
Exactly. And that's what's concerning. The separation there is quite apparent.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's back to this whole separation we're having in society at large anyways. The Edelman Trust Barometer that comes out every year, they will
delivered at Davos.
Yeah. And they'll talk about kind of the informed public, which is the elite type, and then the general public, which is everyone.
Yeah.
And that gap is widening. And here's another example of, the inequality and that gap widening, and that causes distrust.
One of the interesting things that comes out of that trust index that Richard Edelman and team do every year is how while down a little bit, still the high perception of CEOs as people who can deliver good. And those are the people you get to work with all the time and have influence over them. How is the dialogue, let's say 10 years ago, the ESG dialogue that we're all a part of every day now? I'm going to guess 10 years ago that wasn't something that you were addressed about a lot with the companies that you coach and the CEOs who run them.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. That there was a few that were kind of ahead of the game and were thinking about it, but it was not the common approach that it is today. Even the Business Roundtable redefining what a corporation is and saying that it's all stakeholders, not just shareholders, and then really believing that.
Yes.
following up with it. And then obviously the ESG, all these movements of becoming aware of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. It is a different discussion today. And again, but you have a whole range of some that might say the words and they're still not there. Their behavior still kind of mimics the old model of just shareholders only, but others that really are saying, look, the world has changed and we've got to change with it. Because my big argument in this book is the way you're going to win in the marketplace in the long run is by first winning in the workplace with your own people, with your own team.
It's such an important statement. And in reading more in Trust and Inspire, I think you really raised the bar for those of us who are in the business community who do have the responsibility of creating an environment where people feel like they can trust leadership, that the work that they're doing is meaningful, and that the environment is there to help them grow and be productive. I wonder, you say that the command and control structure is outdated and going away, yet one of the other institution that the Edelman Trust Barometer looks at is the role of the military, which is by definition a command and control structure. So how is it that people who grow up and live and work in a command and control structure are such good participants in a trust and inspire environment?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question you're posing, and a couple of thoughts on it. One is, first of all, at least in the United States, the trust in the military, that's our highest trusted profession. Or institution, I should say.
Yeah.
Professions, some of the doctors and nurses is maybe the highest trusted profession, but as an institution, the military remains higher trusted than anywhere else. And while command and control is kind of a military term, what's interesting is even within the military, though, it's shifting to where there's far more trust being extended. And the military historically has focused a lot upon the credibility, the trustworthiness of people, their character, their competence. I mean, General Schwarzkopf was all about character and competence. And that's how you build. And so, good people in the military focused on themselves of being credible, being trustworthy, having character, having competence, learning to trust. I think it was Peter Drucker that says, without trust, people won't fight if they didn't trust their leaders. And so they learned to trust and to build trust in teams and with teams, with each other, in cultures. So they kind of learn how to navigate. And here's where it's shifting. Well, there's clearly a chain of command and a hierarchy in the military. It's just that today's challenges, the landscape, it's fluid and it's fast. And so I think it was General Stanley McChrystal who wrote Team of Teams. He talked about how they adopted a mantra that they used when they were a few years ago in Afghanistan, before when we were still present there. They went like this. It said, if when you get on the ground, the order we gave you was wrong, execute the order we should have given you. It was an extraordinary extension of trust in a life and death scenario, because they'd learned themselves that command and control doesn't quite work when the landscape is shifting and changing all around you. Isn't that a powerful thought? I worked with Admiral William McRaven. He's the former commander of special operations. Under his watch, they got Osama bin Laden. He retired recently, became the chancellor of the University of Texas system.
And gave one of the most memorable and watched commencement addresses ever. Yep,
exactly. You want to change the world, make your bed. Make your bed. But that's also, think about that. That's about self-trust, that I make a commitment, I keep it. I make another commitment, keep it. And you repeat that process. And so the military really does focus on this self-trust. And that's the foundation of all other kinds of trust. It gives you options and opportunities, because it's hard to trust others if you don't trust yourself. People also learn how they have to work together on a team and rely upon each other and extend trust to each other, as well as extend trust up and down. So the world, trust is the secret sauce of the military. And so they kind of have some advantages, even though they have been historically in a command and control mindset. or hierarchy, I would say that the mindset over the last decade or so is shifting even towards trust and inspire, within some hierarchical command and control mechanisms. But the paradigm inside the software, if you will, is shifting, even if the hardware is still command and control. So that's interesting.
That's a really interesting insight. Really interesting. And when you think of military, Stephen, as an observer of leadership, as a teacher and a lecturer on leadership, we're watching one of the most amazing leadership lessons ever taught evolve before our eyes since February 24th, when Russia invaded the Ukraine. President Zelensky is teaching us all about leadership, and it's all about trusting and inspiring people in a place that was not known for great leadership, was not known for great integrity and honesty in its practices. And all of a sudden, when the threat is against us all commonly, the people of Ukraine have responded, and the world is watching and learning from a remarkable leader.
It really is remarkable. That's the best way to phrase it. It's and almost unexpected. And not only is he trusting and inspiring, he's doing, those are the two of the three stewardships. He's leading out with the first one. He's modeling. I mean, it started off when this first happened, the United States and others offered, hey, we'll get you out of here if you want. And he said, I don't need a ride. I need support. I don't want to ride out. I want, in other words, I'm staying. I'm not trying to get out. I'm going to try to lead. So right out of the gates, he modeled the behavior versus looking at just what's best for me. Yeah, by safety, I'll get out. No, I'm in here. Is for the long run, including risking my life. So he won people over with his modeling. And I'm not saying he's perfect, but he went first.
People trust your intentions. They trust your judgment. They trust your motivations. You don't have to be perfect.
You don't.
So from a stewardship point of view, first you model, then you're trusting, and then hopefully inspiring.
Yep. But the reason the sequence matters is that, modeling always comes first. So you model your own credibility, your character, your competence. And modeling inspires people when they see a model, when they see a leader as a model like Zelensky or others, that will inspire, like you. When they see a model, someone that goes first, and that model can become a mentor. And that's who we are. You always start with that. Trusting is about how we lead. And our whole premise is that we want to get things done through people, but also in a way that grows people. So we want to get results. I mean, everyone has to get results. Any leadership model that doesn't have results in it is missing it. It's got to get results. But how we go about getting the results matters too. We want to get results in a way that grows people, in a way that builds the team, builds the culture, that inspires trust, so that our ability to get results in the future has just gone up. So people are not just a means to an end, people are also an end. Yeah. The result is an end, and the growth of the person is an end. And that nothing grows people like trust and being trusted, giving people opportunities, giving them a chance, empowering them, trusting them. You could have two trustworthy people working together, but no trust between them, even though they're both trustworthy, if neither person is willing to extend trust to the other. So it's not enough to merely be trustworthy to have trust. It's necessary, but insufficient. You also need to be trusting, need to be willing to give that trust, to extend that trust. I find there's big gaps there, even through this pandemic, when a lot of people were working from home. In many cases, they didn't feel trusted by their company. They just felt like, hey, they have no choice now, but I still feel distrusted. I'm being micromanaged from a distance. In other cases, the CEOs and senior leadership and others really went out of their way to say, we trust you. And we build the agreement together around the trust we're extending, but we trust you. And then when people feel trusted, they tend to reciprocate and return the trust, as well as respond to it. And then finally, you move into inspiring. And here's a paradigm shift, Jim, is that everyone can inspire. It's not just for the charismatic. Yeah. Inspiring others is a learnable skill through connection, connecting with people, through caring and belonging, and then connecting people to purpose and to meaning and to contribution. And we can all learn to do that. And we can inspire others as a leader. And that really is a stewardship that we have, I believe, when we're in a role of a leader.
The points you make in the book about the role of trust and inspire in your role as a parent. Now, I think you're a parent of 5 children.
I am, yes.
And they're at all different stages. I'm frankly concerned about the generation that's just hitting the workforce now, all that they've had to go through in the last few years, not having the steadiness of institutions that we would have expected they'd have. And then you're confounded with data. You talk about trust in the workplace. You go to a virtual environment, and they're just micromanaging from afar. We know from the data that people are a lot less productive at home. Data tells us that. Yet you see some people overperforming, and some people have just easily found their way to distraction. So when you're working with your clients, the companies that you work with, the groups that you work with, how do you model? How do you trust and then inspire people to come up to speed?
At least what you try to do is really, whenever you're extending this trust, whether that's in a virtual setting or for that matter, even in person, that you need to build the agreement together around the trust being extended, being given, so that there's clear expectations and there's an agreed upon process for accountability to those expectations. And you're really trying to shift the responsibility to, me as the boss hovering over the person, and the person taking ownership and responsibility to delivering results against the expectations we agreed to together. Mm-hmm. And then people feel like, hey, I'm really responsible. They really trust me. They're not just saying that they trust me. They do trust me. And I'm accountable to this agreement and to the results I've agreed to. And they're not going to hover over me. I'm going to report on how I'm doing. And I happen to know better really than anyone else how I'm doing. If I have more I can give that I'm not giving. And the more you build that relationship of trust first, and then build an agreement with expectations and accountability where the person feels I'm responsible to this agreement we built together, that tends to bring out the best in people where they do perform better and they are more productive. If they feel inspired because they feel truly trusted, they do perform better. A study from Bain came out that showed inspired employees are 125% more productive than merely satisfied employees. So just being satisfied is not enough. You're 125% more productive if you feel inspired. Inspired employees were even 56% more productive than engaged employees. And we've been using engagement kind of as the, holy grail, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And that's a good thing. You won't get the inspiration without going through engagement.
Yeah.
So engagement still is a good thing to go after. But there's even another frontier. If people feel inspired, and inspire means to breathe life into, and to ignite the fire within, that they're not just motivated, but they're inspired. There's another level of productivity that they can reach, that they choose to give, and they volunteer, and they're more creative, they're more innovative. It's in them if they feel like they want to give it fully, and it's only them that really knows if they left it on the table or if they really are operating at that highest level. And that's what we're trying to get to. And that's why trust and inspire. And, this is, I think where leadership is going towards is inspiration.
Are there, when you worked with this company that was all virtual, anything about the leadership there that you really took note of? What did you notice about their style, about the leadership, that they can be so effective in a completely virtual environment?
Jim, I find that people who are good at trust are the ones trying to become better. They're already good. They were already good, but they were saying a little bit what you just kind of had phrased earlier, had posed, that how do we trust our people? We do, but how do we make sure we are really getting out their very best work? So the focus we had was on how to extend that trust with clear expectations and with agreed upon accountability. You build the agreement together. Almost by definition, they were saying, we trust you, but they had not focused enough on clear expectations around the trust being given. And, so they sometimes felt a little frustrated, like, even though this is our model, I gotta have her over, but they needed more help on building the agreement, and they kind of knew it, and they wanted help on how do we build that agreement. And I call it the stewardship agreement, of the trust being given with expectations and accountability. And it goes back even as far back as my father in the 7 Habits, when he wrote the 7 Habits book, when I was just a 7-year-old boy, and he taught me how to take care of our lawn, our grass. He called it green and clean.
Yep.
And, and he trained me over 2 weeks to take care of our lawn. This is back in the days before automatic sprinklers, to turn them on, to take, but the whole point was, it's your job. We need green and clean. That's the result. How you do it is up to you. If I were you, I'd turn on the sprinklers, but you don't have to. You can use a hose or buckets or spit all day long as we get green and clean. And then he built accountability into it, saying, hey, once a week, let's walk around and tell me how you're doing. Yeah. And so my point is, if it works with a 7-year-old, I'll bet it can work with a 17-year-old or a 27, 37, 57, 77-year-old, because these principles work. In that case, they were really saying, how do we get better? That's what's interesting. The people who are good at leadership and at trust, I find, are the ones that are really trying to get better. There's Admiral William McRaven. Here, elite fighting forces, special ops, the best of the best. They were already good at trust. Their lives depend upon trusting each other, trying to get better at building even a higher trust culture that inspires, even though they're already the best of the best. And, and sometimes you're dealing with companies that are really broken and struggling, and to their credit, they're saying, we've got to work on this. So we run the gamut, but that's a big part of what people are doing. This idea that inspiring others is a learnable skill. I've never really thought of inspiration that way. And they've more equated inspiration with charisma. I'm probably like you, Jim. I know a lot of people who some might call charismatic, but who are not necessarily inspiring. And I know other people who no one would necessarily call charismatic, but who are remarkably inspiring because of who they are and how they truly connect with people through caring and belonging and a sense of purpose. And that inspires. And the whole idea is that everyone can inspire. It's a learnable skill. That is probably such a paradigm shift for many that they're saying, wow, I've never thought of leadership that's a stewardship I have as a leader, is to inspire. But that's where leadership is going, I believe.
So what's conversation around the dinner table at your house like on a Sunday afternoon?
We have great conversations that sometimes we'll talk about ideas like these, and we'll banter it around, and that refines it. And because, like you point out, I really took this trust and inspire approach and said, look, this is not just for leadership and organizations. Everyone's a leader. So this is how you operate in your home, in your family, as a parent, as a grandparent, as an aunt or uncle, in the classroom, as a coach, as a mentor, in any walk of life. The key to becoming a trust and inspire leader is to first become a trust and inspire person. So we're trying to help our kids become trust and inspire people that think this way, that think third alternatives, that think, to put service above self-interest and to elevate caring above competing. Yeah, let's compete in the marketplace, but let's care and collaborate in the workplace and with each other and as a family. We have a fun family model that tries to instill this into our family with my kids and now even some grandkids. So, and the family motto is this, that it's, I am important because I belong to a family that loves me. And we kind of instill that each one of you, each kids, grandkids, you're all important. Why? Because you're part of this family and this family loves you. You belong. So there's both caring and belonging in that, and hopefully a sense of an identity. And that inspires and that anchors as well, and gives people a sense of, I can do this. And trust and inspire is all about, seeing the potential, the greatness inside of each person and really communicating that and developing it and unleashing it so they can become all that they want to become. And, then my father did that with me with Green and Clean, and I'm trying to do it with my kids and hopefully them with their kids.
Well, I can assure you that you've influenced the conversation around our beach house this weekend. when we'll have a good chunk of the family assembled. You've just set the agenda. But that is so important. And as with so many families now, you see the next generation coming along, my grandkids and their cousins, and you see the one kid who just socially isn't as skilled as the others. Then you have the special needs fellow over here. And to see like the kids at the pool yesterday who came together in support of the one fellow who's around them every day and will never, ever be physically competitive, but was emotionally competitive and gave a great example yesterday. And to see your grandkids, first ones up to the side of the pool with their toes on the edge, clapping and cheering him on. And I think that's what we have to do within families too. It sounds like you live and have learned that's the role of a family. What do you think about the idea of a year of service for our country? That people, when they graduated from high school, would do a year of service of some kind or another before they'd go on to their college education?
I think the principle of it is profound. To serve and to have the mindset of service, of not just what's in it for me, how can I best serve, is a big idea. And whether or not it gets adopted in a year of service or some other way form, I don't know, but the principle behind it is beautiful. You know, we live in a culture that tends to be the opposite.
Yes.
It's more what's in it for me, for most people. And it's reinforced around that with everything around you. But to see, you know, you describing the experience of seeing your grandchildren with these other folks and this individual that physically was struggling, but emotionally was competing with every strength, and to see the mindset of serving and helping and caring and elevating
and embracing
and loving and coming together, and that this is a stewardship we have to help each other. You know, we need more of this in our society because we are fractured and divided too much, and a service mentality and mindset would go a long way to begin to shift that. Hopefully that's the premise. And I love how Dr. Martin Luther King put it, that everyone has the potential for greatness, not for fame, but for greatness, because greatness is determined by service. You know, I like the notion. I think one of the fundamental beliefs of a trust-inspired leader is that leadership is stewardship. So my job as a leader is to put service above self-interest. Look, it's not my rights, it's my responsibilities. It's not my position, it's my influence. I define stewardship as a job with a trust. I have a stewardship for the people I'm leading, so I want to put service above self-interest. I'm trying to help them develop. I want to treat people according to their potential, not just their behavior, and hopefully see their potential and communicate it so they come to see it in themselves, and then develop it and unleash it. And then I'm really leading through serving. So there are a lot of tie-ins to servant leadership in this whole approach. And you know, so that's a philosophy. And then when you add to it the modeling, the trusting, because sometimes servant leaders have a hard time letting go, and inspiring, then I think we've gone full circle with it all.
When I went through your barriers, I was stuck on number 3, which is I don't know how to let go. It's one I'm trying to learn every day, Stephen.
I understand, especially high achievers and people that have done so much and done so well, and entrepreneurs. And so, you know, people like yourself, Jim, that are so good at what you do. It's hard to let go sometimes because maybe we would do it differently. But the whole idea is that risk and return go together. By letting go, maybe they come up with actually a better way of doing it than we might have done. I
thought it could never be done better. Oh, they're doing it better. There's a joy in that, but there is that in between land.
It is. It's hard. It's hard for all of us. So the barriers to becoming a trust-inspired leader are trying to get real about, hey, if this were so easy, we'd all be doing it. You know, we're worried about losing control. We're also worried about what if this doesn't work. What if I don't know how to really let go? What if this is who I am? This is what brought me to the dance. This is what I know. This is almost my identity. And it's back to what you were saying at the outset, that we are not our styles. We can rescript, we can learn, we can choose to become better. My father in 7 Habits said, habit 1 was be proactive. And the idea was, you're not a program, you're a programmer.
Yep.
And I would say the same thing, that you are not your style of leadership. You can choose your style, you can change, you can adapt it. So maybe we've been a little bit command and control to bring us to where we're at today, but it's not going to work in this new world of work. Trust and Inspire is saying, this is better for the new world of work as leaders, to build the high trust culture that inspires, to collaborate and innovate so we can stay relevant. And our style often gets in the way of our intent, but we are not our style.
You can learn, your style can change, you can adjust, you can morph. Yes, I have to surrender here. No matter how much I stamp my feet, the world is not going back the way it was. And I have to learn and adapt. But it's being open to listening to someone making a good point or a good argument, or in your case, a good lesson to be learned. I remember I was privileged to see your dad speak a couple of times. And in one session he did, I think it was at a convention, maybe in Las Vegas, where he took half the room, and before he began his remarks, he told half the room, I'm going to call on a few of you to teach back what I'm doing here. So you have your pad, you have your pens, you're going to be required at some point to stand up and reteach this. And the other half of the room was there as just participants and listeners. The scoring in terms of retention was remarkably higher from those who had the expectations that they had to listen differently. They had to take notes differently. They had to be prepared to represent this material. That was 30 years ago. I heard him and give that lesson. And I talk to my kids, my grandkids, my coworkers about it all the time. And whenever we go into a meeting, I usually take a young person on the side and say, at the end, I'm going to call on you to summarize where we were, what the action items were, and what did we learn from today's meeting. And it always puts them on the spot, but they participate so much more. They get so much more out of it, and in turn, get us to get more out of it.
Beautiful, Jim. Absolutely. That it shifts their paradigm.
Yes.
Now I'm not just a participant, I'm a teacher. The best way to learn is to teach and to see yourself as a teacher. So that's a great illustration of how you can shift the paradigm of a member of your team saying, hey, I want you to kind of summarize and teach what we learned in this session as we walk out. They go into this different in kind. Trust in the paradigm. You could try it with kids, with grandkids, have them teach you what they're learning at school.
Yes.
You say, hey, I want to hear about this. Why don't we next Sunday, I want you to teach me what you learned this week. It might shift their paradigm of I'm a teacher. I need to teach dad or grandpa or mom or grandma, what's going on, or the aunt, so it is a mindset. And Trust and Inspire starts with that mindset, the paradigm. Because until you shift the paradigm, the behavior doesn't stay. You'll easily shift back into command and control if you still don't see the greatness inside of people. If and everyone. I love your example that you gave of over the weekend, that everyone had greatness, even the person that was physically struggling still had greatness. And to see that, it's not just the high potentials have greatness in organizations. Everyone is, in a sense, high potential.
And as much as anything else, Stephen, it was the sense of community.
A sense of community.
On there, that everyone had the same intent and the right attitude and the sense of communal giving, that they were embracing this young man and his challenge and his struggles and saying, you're a part of us.
Yes.
What's more powerful than that? We all need and want to belong.
That's our motto. I am important because I belong to a family that loves me, meaning I'm part of this. It's part of my identity. My son played college football at the University of Utah. He's actually right now trying to
play with the Eagles.
Yeah, he's trying. So we'll see. It's a tough task. It's not very big. But I'll just talk about his college experience. They had a great experience, but they also went through some tragedy where within a 9-month period, they lost 2 teammates. One was an accidental shooting where he accidentally, and another was an intentional shooting. 2 teammates in a 9-month period took a toll on the team. They love these teammates of theirs that were killed. It was just so difficult. And yet it also was what brought the team together. They were inspired by trying to play for their teammates. And so the University of Utah had their best year ever, won the Pac-12, went to the Rose Bowl, and did really well. But what was interesting was how these teammates, that when they passed away in their funerals, the dominant identity that they had that was seen was that they were part of this team. It was displayed everywhere with their uniforms and that they had the entire team fly down to their location in Texas where they were based. The family members felt like this was the greatest source of happiness and connection and satisfaction to my child or friend or niece or nephew that passed away, that they were part of this team. They had this sense of identity tied to belonging to a team that cared for them. And it was just remarkable to see what being part of something meaningful does to people, how they identify with it, that sense of belonging, the sense of care, love even, that is so powerful that we need more of in a fractured world. That can help offset the fractured if we can come together, even if it's in smaller teams and in families and communities and in home, and we can try to counteract a low trust world. And so I just think there's a lot we can do, that we don't have to wait for everything to be perfect out there, because it's not, but we are the catalysts, the co-catalysts to help bring about that kind of trust and inspire world by becoming a trust and inspire person ourselves.
Well, Stephen and Mark Covey, I'm very thankful for the Covey family chain, because I learned so much from your dad. I've learned so much from you, from reading Trust and Inspire, from chatting with you today, and from listening to you. I've been listening with the idea that I'm going to go teach what I learned from you today to my kids and grandkids and my team members. And I think I'll retain a lot, but I know because not only did I hear it, but I felt it. And thank you for sharing your gift with me and with us.
Thank you, Jim. I so appreciate that. And, and I feel similarly about you. You're a trust and inspire person and leader. I can sense it. I can feel it. And look at what you're doing, the contributions you're making. It'd be easy to rest upon your laurels. And with all that you've done and achieved and accomplished with your entrepreneurial success and your business success, but here you are, your greatest contribution is still in front of you. It's always ahead of you. And that's how you're approaching this with this podcast, this chatter, this whole discussion. You're still contributing in enormous ways. And my dad called this living life in crescendo, that your most important work is always ahead of you.
I love that.
With all you've done, Jim, you're still living life in crescendo. Your greatest work is still ahead of you.
Well, I know there's so much more to learn, and thank you for helping me up the learning curve today.
Absolutely. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, Steve. Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Celebrations Chatter. You can join our community by reaching out at chatter@celebrations.com. And while you're at it, tell us what topics you'd like us to explore here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to share it forward.